Hi, my name is Drew Pomeroy, and welcome to this beginner-friendly series on learning RStudio and Shiny Apps IO for athlete monitoring. In this series, we'll be exploring how to create a dynamic and user-friendly web application to monitor athletic performance, specifically focusing on baseball players. All right, so I actually did forget one thing that I want to do, and it's regarding the rotational test. So we do have a left side and a right side. So what I want to do is be able to select that med ball, hitter style shot put, peak velocity, and then I want it to show me the left and the right sides for that event down at the bottom. So we're gonna need to do a couple of things here. One, we're in the UI code. So I'm going to the fluid row for rotational test dropdown. What we're gonna need to do is actually, we can keep this part the same, but instead of choices being null, because remember we pull those in and it reads them in that way, and we're actually getting both left and right sides as singular choices. So we actually don't want empty choices. So I'm going to take this piece out, and we're actually going to combine. So we're going to get, and we'll need the actual column names. So if you want to do call names, new assessment, and grab those, you can totally do that. I have them written on the side here. So I'm gonna grab, and we're gonna remove the left and the right from them. So I'm just gonna grab them because I have them written down. So what we do here, paste like that. See, so now we don't have the left and the right on there. So we just have our 3 tests that are in there. And then later on, we're gonna be able to parse out the left and the right side so that when we select these, it is giving us the left and the right side together side by side. And then this one, our rotational test graph, that can stay the same. So let's move on to our server code. And one thing I'm going to do here as well, just so that I can, because this is getting long, we got a lot of lines of code in here, I'm actually going to put in like a more definitive break into the code. So I'm going to put server code here just so that way when I run certain things, because sometimes I run the server code, I'm not running the UI code, but I'm just testing something in the server, and I really want to be able to tell those apart. So let me actually scroll up to the UI code and do the same. Define UI. Let me grab what I've already done over here. So just a little organization. Whoops, that was the wrong one. I actually want user interface, and I also want to have that section for reading in the data. And why not make this a little bit more clear? G-Sheets to work in Shiny, and then I can actually take this one out, just so that way we're a little bit more organized when we go through. We actually, we're kind of creating sections within our code. So let's pop on down to the server code and we'll update the things in there for this rotational test. So a key thing here is going to be, we actually don't need to do these rota columns anymore. That's calling out the left and the right side, right? Because this is adding to that drop down. So what we're gonna do is actually completely take this out. I'm going to highlight the whole thing, and I'm just going to paste my little comment here. I'm saying no rotational test here because we would create a left and right data frame later on. So just having that as a little note in here, we'll keep scrolling down and actually get into that code. All right, so I've scrolled down here to our rotational test data. So you can, Control F that to go find it, or just scroll down. What we're going to do here, we are going to be keeping this line, but extracting the values. Instead of extracting them, what we're going to do is define them. So define the full metric names. So instead of rota metric values, we're actually going to do the rota left metrics and the rota right. So let's go rota left metric. And we're gonna change this completely. I'm gonna keep that input piece in there though, because we're gonna need that. So what we're gonna call on here is paste. So what this is going to do, we have input selected rota metric. Nice. We're going to put a comma in here, and this will be important. So our left side is going to have space. Be sure to put that space in there, otherwise this won't work. And left in all capitals. Get rid of these brackets from earlier, and we're just going to put the a dig parenthesis there. So that's going to define, it's going to look in there for our drop-down selection. So it's pulling our drop-down selection for the 3 different tests, and then it's saying if it's a left metric, that's going to have space left on the end of it. So we're going to do the same thing for the right. So we can just copy this, go to this one, highlight this left. We're going to go rota right metric, same thing, paste. Input selected, so that is pasting the input that we are selecting from the dropdown, and then adding right to the end of it. So now these are now defined within what we've got going on. So next, what we need to do, let's just do a check, because sometimes in the assessment, what I'll get is that some kids, based off of an injury or whatever happens, maybe that value is not there. So I just want to check to see if the columns exist in the data. And then it's going to give us an error if they do not. So we're going to check if the columns exist in the data. So we're going to write an if statement. If, and let's give it, so the exclamation point, so we're going to go rota left metric is in, call names, new assessment. Remember, that's what we call, if we just run that line right there, just call names, new assessment. Remember, that's going to give us a list down here in console of all the column names in new assessment, the file we're reading in. So we'll make sure that that's blocked off there. We will do 2 vertical bars, and then same thing for rota right metric, and percent in percent. Again, call names, new assessment. Okay, and that needs 3 because we're closing off that if statement. And then we need to do a squiggle. And what do we want this to be? We want to stop if the selected columns for rotational metrics do not exist in the data. So that is what we will get back in console if there's nothing in there. So we're just checking that they exist. Next, we need to extract the values for the selected metric. Okay, so we're gonna same thing, take that rota left, rota right, but we're gonna define the actual metric values, right? So we're pulling those metric values out. So we're gonna call this rota metric values left. Okay, so that's coming in from player data all events, right? Because this is longitudinal. And then 2 brackets, and we want to select the rota left metric. All right, the next one we're gonna do, same thing. We're gonna do rota metric values, but for the right side. Okay, player data all events, and then 2 brackets, and it's gonna be the rota metric values. Rota, whoops, that was the wrong one. Rota right metric. All right, so that's how we're extracting those values. And then if we have anything that's NA in there, right? So no data, it comes up as NA. We want to handle the NA values. So we're going to take both those rotometric values left, the rotometric values right. I'm going to say is NA, and then we're just going to give it a 0. So that way, if there is nothing there, it's actually going to fill it with information so that the display actually works. So, all right, let's go rotometric values left. And this calls for a bracket is.na. And we're now going to go rotometric values left. So right, if that is NA, we now want to give that a 0. And then same thing for the right. Let's just go ahead and copy this. And this one is going to be right and right. Nice. So we're handling NA values. And now we need to create a combined data frame for plotting. So we're doing a lot of setup work here. So let's go ahead and comment that out. Create a combined data frame for plotting. So what we'll need to do here, and we'll just call this plot data, and boom. So I need to pull from player data all events. And then we need to pipe that into, whoops. All right, we're going to select, and this is their event ID, and pipe that into a mutate. So in our mutate, what we'll do, let me scroll down a bit. We're going to take left, right, that is going to equal the rotometric values left. Rotometric values left, and let's give right, which will equal rotometric values right. Rotometric values right. And we close that off. We're going to pipe this again, and we want to pivot. We're going to pivot longer. So columns are going to be, and this is what we're calling on that left and right. So left, right, outside the brackets, comma, we're going to use names too. Call that side, and the values to is going to be value. All right, and then we can go ahead and create the plot itself. So let's review what we just wrote in here, because we haven't covered any data manipulation really yet within our script here. So this whole section, what does this actually mean? What we're doing is taking the data from player data all events. So we're retrieving the data, and then for our selected columns, the select event ID selects the event ID column from the data set, keeping only that column for the further operations. So then we are mutating the left and the right, which creates two new columns, left and right. The rotometric values left is assigned to the left column, rotometric values right is assigned to the right column. These variables for rotometric values left and right contains the metric values for the left and the right sides respectively. So we're actually reshaping the data, and that's what pivot longer does to that left and right side. So we're reshaping this to that wide format, so it's a long format. All right, the values left and right are combined into two columns, the side and the value. Okay, so the values from the left and right columns are placed in the value, And then the side column indicates whether the value is from the left or the right side. So we're just creating new columns within this plot data. So now we can actually get back into our visualization here. So ggplot, we know that that actually is creating the graph itself. So we're going to keep some of this, but we're definitely going to change what we're doing in here. So let's see. This ggplot play data all events, we're not using this because we just created plot data. So instead of player data all events, we're going to change this to plot data. All right, our aesthetics, X is going to equal the event ID. Y, instead of that rotametrics value that we've now gotten rid of, we're actually going to change this to, let's see, Y is going to be, right, because we just defined it, Y is going to be the value, and then the fill is going to be the side. So what is this telling us? The X coordinates are going to be our event IDs, and Y is going to be the actual value from either the left or the right side, and the fill will be that side. So that's going to create the two separate ones. Now we need to give some more information for the left and the right side. So we're still going to use gmbar. Stat is still going to be identity, but instead of fill black, because we're dealing with two metrics now, we're going to take that out, and we need to call on the position. So what this is going to tell us, and we're going to position dodge, so that the position dodge essentially creates those two bars for us. Right, so essentially gmbar stat equals identity, which we've done before, but this position, all this is saying is that we're ensuring that bars for different groups, in this case our left and right sides, are displayed next to each other rather than stacked on top of each other. If we didn't have this, we'd be creating stacked bar charts, which is not what we want. So this essentially just says, hey, split that left and right sides. So then we go back to the code here, gmtext aesthetics, the label. Our label is going to change to the value. So anywhere you see those rotametric values, we're actually just changing to value. vjust, we're going to keep that the same, and the color for this one is going to be black, size 3.5. But what we're going to need to do is set the dodge in here as well. So after 3.5, do another comma, and we're going to have position equals position dodge, and we want to look at the width here, and let's just, as an example, it's pretty standard, set it to 0.9, and then that all checks out at the end. And we're actually going to need to add a new line here. So what we're going to be using is scale fill manual. So this is actually going to be the fill for the left and the right side. So this is actually calling on what the color of those columns are going to be. So let's do scale fill manual. All right, we're going to take the values that are combined in there. So the left, we actually are going to want to be, I just want these to be black. And then right is going to be, let's choose steel blue. I just think that's a nice color, blue. Make sure you add the addition button, and then labels. Event ID is going to be our X label, that is correct. Y input selected rotametric, that is going to stay the same. And our title, and again we're going back to that paste, longitudinal, and the same thing, input selected rotametric. So this is telling us that on our y-axis our selected rotametric is going to pop up, and then in our title it's going to say longitudinal, input selected rotometric. I do think this is a little too much because we get essentially the same words in the y-axis as we do in the title, and we're actually going to have a title later on that we're going to work on some aesthetics on. But for now, we'll keep this, and we'll eventually take this piece out just for redundancy. Same thing, theme minimal. We're going to run this, and we should be good to go. So let's go up to the UI. Great. UI, server, and let's check out our Shiny app now. So let's make this a bit bigger. You can see we've got everything coming in, awesome. And then down here, we could not find the function plot data. So let's go ahead and figure out what went wrong there. So the mistake that I made in here was actually in this first line. So when I type in plot data and then you do these parentheses, this is looking for a function. This is not a function, it is a data frame, and data frames do not require those two parentheses, only functions do. So now let's go ahead and run this properly, and so UI, server, the app, let's scroll to the bottom. And that's funny that it showed up gray. Why would it do that? So again, another error, which happens all the time. You see I have left equals black, right has a comma, which needs to equal steel blue. So now we're gonna have that pull through. So let's go back and just go to our UI first. Run that, run the server, now run the Shiny app, and we can see that comes in exactly as we want it. We have that left and right side populating here, and now we have the left and the right sides for each event, and we can change these and see those update. So pretty cool now that we've been able to pull these out, and this is that kind of redundancy I was talking about, where we've got the med ball hitter style shot put over here, and then same thing, longitudinal med ball. And what I find really odd is A's and I's are kind of funky when you put them up in here. Makes things look a little weird. Reminds me of Bring Me the Horizon song titles off their new album. But anyway, we've got it up here. So what we'll do is actually put in some headers and stuff next, just to make sure that this is looking good. And we've got it kind of a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, but it's really coming together. So what I want to do is I definitely want to add a couple of headers and stuff in here. But before that, we're going to add in our range of motion data, and that's just going to be a table that will display over time. So let's go ahead and do that. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell to stay updated on the next video, and I'll see you in the next one.